My son, don't let the sea take you. Queen Amahli's cry shattered the night, mingling with the howling wind and the roar of the Atlantic Ocean's waves, fierce as a wild beast. She plunged into the icy water, where Malik, her only son, was drifting further away, his eyes glowing with a deep blue radiance, a gaze no longer human. Just one moon cycle ago, she had held him in her arms, his childish laughter echoing through the coral palace of Port Royal. Now before her stood a creature bound by an ancient curse, to consume the golden-scaled mermaid, Mamizaya, daughter of the Mother of the Sea. Amahel knew the cruel truth. Only one life could be traded for another. But how could a mother stand by and watch her son be dragged into the darkness of the abyss? She was ready to offer her very soul, if only to reclaim her son's heart. If you leave now, you will miss the tale of a sacrifice so profound that even the ocean itself would fall silent in reverence. Once upon a time, in the coastal kingdom of the low country of Gala, where endless green rice fields stretched to the sea's edge and the salty mist seeped into every breath, ancient stories were preserved through songs, the beats of djembe drums, and whispers passed down through generations. Among them, there was a legend no one dared mention in crowded places. Once you have tasted the flesh of the golden-scaled mermaid, your soul will never again belong to the land. The elders said that Mermaid, Mamizaya, was the daughter of the Mother of the Sea. Her scales shone like molten gold, shimmering under the sunset, each movement of her tail creating sparkling trails like treasures just pulled from the ocean floor. Her hair swirled gently like undercurrents, and her eyes, deep and bright, held the sorrow of waves that had traveled thousands of miles. Whoever captured her, or harmed her, would be claimed by the sea tenfold. Malik, the only son of King Kwame Darrell, grew up amidst all that beauty. The Darrell family's palace stood on a foundation of coral stone, with ivory white walls and balconies facing the Atlantic Ocean. From a young age, Malik was raised in the salty breeze and the rustling of palm leaves, in the morning calls of the Charleston market, and the sweet scent of grass wafting from vendors' baskets. He was handsome, broad-shouldered, with a smile that quickly captured hearts, but his gaze always turned to the distant horizon. The throne of Port Royal was never what he sought. His heart belonged to marlin hunting expeditions on the open ocean, where wind and waves were the only obstacles to his awe. But fate would not allow a prince to forever escape his duties. On a summer morning, when the sun had just touched the tops of the palms, the council of elders gathered in the palm-thatched great hall, the drums beating slowly like the kingdom's heartbeat. King Kwame sat on his intricately carved ebony throne, his deep black eyes staring straight at his son. He declared slowly, his voice resounding like waves crashing against rocky shores. Before the next full moon, you must choose a queen. The whole fell into silence. On the cool stone floor, rows of noble maidens knelt neatly, heads bowed low but eyes flashing with hope. Among them, two faces shone brighter than all. Abeni, daughter of the pastor from James Island, her skin smooth as a calm night. Long black hair braided skillfully, adorned with tiny white seashell beads reflecting the torchlight. Her face gentle, movements light, each step like a breeze through the rice fields. Though born into a family of faith, Abeni understood how this palace operated, and deep down she longed to stand beside Malik. Nyasha, daughter of the chief from Beaufort, completely opposite, tall and statuesque, shoulders straight like a warrior, eyes sharp as a freshly honed blade. Her natural curly hair cascaded down, each strand gleaming copper in the light. In her was the strength of a leader, of one unaccustomed to bowing. Malik glanced over the row of maidens, the corner of his mouth curling into an enigmatic smile. He had never believed in the royal rituals of selecting a wife. Those sessions of poetry, dance, or offering gifts, they were too predictable, too dull. He wanted something different, something that would make everyone remember. Standing tall, his eyes sparkling with mischief, he spoke lightly but loud enough to echo through the hall. "If I must choose, then let them prove their love." A murmur rippled softly through the kneeling figures. Prove how? Before the council? With strength? Or with sacrifice? No one dared ask. But one thing was clear. Malik's words had sown a seed, one that would sprout into an unprecedented challenge in the history of Port Royal. In the flickering torchlight, Abeni felt her heart beat faster. She knew the path ahead would not be simple, and Nyasha, sitting just a few steps away, thought the same. Two women, two personalities, both aiming for one throne, but a throne now concealing a mystery. Above, the sea breeze blew in through the arched windows, carrying a saltier scent than usual, as if the ocean itself were listening. Somewhere far offshore, amid the rolling waves, a creature with silver eyes gently opened them, sensing the shift in the world's pulse. Malik had not told anyone that he already had a plan for this challenge. A reckless, dangerous plan, involving the legend his mother had once forbidden mentioning. But in his heart, he believed that the one worthy to be his queen must be brave enough to cross every boundary, even those humans should not touch. The council disbanded, the maidens were let out, and Malik remained standing there, watching the sunset dye the beach red. Night would soon fall over the low country, and with it, the whispers of the sea would become clearer. He had no idea that the decision he had just made would open the door to a chain of events that would make the entire kingdom tremble, and that the game he was about to set in motion would awaken a wrath that had slumbered for hundreds of years beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Do you dare stay to learn what that challenge is? And the price to pay for daring to defy the sea? The rumor came like a strange wind, sweeping through every street corner, harbor, and palace hallway. In a single morning, it had slipped from the boats anchored at Port Royal to the bustling market stalls of Charleston. Out in the deep waters of Sapelo, a group of fishermen had seen and captured Mami Zaya, the golden-scaled mermaid of legend. The elders shook their heads, their calloused hands gripping prayer beads tightly, their eyes filled with worry. They knew what the younger generation dismissed as mere fantasy. To touch Mami Zaya was to defy the mother of the sea. And the sea, once angered, would not exact revenge swiftly. It would take everything slowly, like the tide creeping over every inch of land. But to Malik, the rumor carried no hint of warning. It was like a fateful gift placed into his hands at the right moment for the right person. He imagined the astonished gazes of the Council of Elders, Abeni's troubled expression, Nyasha's proud demeanor when faced with an unprecedented challenge. A game that only someone with a courageous or reckless heart could overcome. Malik wasted no time in acting. As the sun set, he left the great hall, striding through the coral stone pathways leading to the southern docks. There, Jahlani, his loyal guard, awaited a towering man with shoulders like a fortress, his stern gaze ever ready to carry out any command. Malik spoke softly, his voice lowered as if guarding a secret from being carried away by the wind and waves. "Bring her here, but let no one know." Jahlani's journey lasted through the night. The small boat glided over pitch-black waves, with only the silver moonlight as its companion. Out in the Sapelo waters, the sea seemed to hold its breath, and when a torch was lit on the deck, the form of the mermaid appeared beautiful to the point of pain. Her scales gleamed like true gold, each one reflecting the torchlight like a tiny flame. Her thick black hair flowed long, blending into the salty water, moving slowly as if alive. Her eyes, silver like the sea under moonlight, showed no fear. They were deep, calm, and held something that made the onlooker feel small before a different world. Bound lightly with tightly woven coconut fiber ropes, she did not struggle, only observed, as if knowing this journey was merely the prelude to a longer symphony. When Jahlani brought her back to shore, Malik did not take her to the palace. He chose another place, a hidden cave deep within the salt marsh, known only to seasoned alligator hunters. To reach it, one had to navigate narrow waterways covered with the dark, tangled roots of mangrove trees, where the still surface reflected the stars above. The cave opened like the mouth of a giant creature, the air thick with the scent of salt mingled with damp earth and rotting seaweed. Inside, Malik had torches hung along the rocky walls, their golden flames reflecting off the mermaid's scales, making them blaze like a treasure hoard. Mommy Zaya lay in the center of that space, her slender hands resting lightly, her gaze fixed directly on Malik. There was no pleading, no resentment, only a look that seemed to pierce through flesh, touching the deepest part of the soul. In that moment, Malik felt as though he was not the captor, but the one held captive. He took a step back, but did not look away. In his mind, the plan was clear. She would be the centerpiece of the challenge. Abeni and Nyasha would have to face what no one dared to confront, and from that, his choice would be indisputable. Outside, the marsh remained silent, but the wind had begun to shift. The seabirds cried loudly before falling abruptly quiet. The water, once mirror-smooth, rippled with faint waves, as if a colossal force was stirring in the depths. Malik did not notice, but Mommy Zaya tilted her head slightly, her lips pressed together, and in her eyes flickered something very close to pity. That night, as he left the cave, Malik carried the belief that he was in control of everything. He did not know that to the sea, humans were but grains of sand, and what he had just touched was not a game but the beginning of a judgment. And the question now is, if you knew the sea was silent only to prepare for the greatest storm of your life, would you dare stay to witness it? Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing viewers from all over come together here, or just comment the number 1 if you're excited to hear the rest of the story. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching this video from. The moonlight, thin as a blade, sliced across the sea's surface when Malik decided the time had come. That night, the wind from the open ocean carried a heavier saltiness than usual, wrapping around the palace like a reminder that the sea was always near, always listening. In Malik's mind, everything was set a challenge like no other, where courage and loyalty would be weighed in ways no one dared imagine. The cave, hidden deep within the salt marsh where Mommy Zaya was held, now blazed with dozens of torches fixed along the damp rock walls. The flickering flames danced on the shallow, moss-covered water, casting light on the mermaid's golden scales, making her look like an ancient statue forged from lost treasure. The air was thick with the scent of salt, seaweed, and something else, a sweet, briny smell, both alluring and terrifying. Before a dark ebony table draped with deep red cloth, 2 intricately carved chairs stood waiting. On the table, steam rose from a large platter at the center, and beneath the thin veil of vapor were slices of glistening golden flesh shimmering like metal fresh from the forge. The aroma wafted, rich and potent, with a strange allure. It was unlike any fish or sea creature Abeni and Nyasha had ever known. Malik entered, his shadow stretching long across the damp stone floor. Abeni and Nyasha, brought to the cave in silence, sat across from each other, their eyes briefly meeting before quickly turning away. No lengthy explanation was needed. A single glance from Malik was enough for both to understand. This was the challenge he had spoken of. Nyasha looked at the platter of flesh, the corner of her mouth curling upward. In her eyes, no challenge was too great if it meant claiming the throne. Abeni, on the other hand, felt her chest tighten. In the stillness of the space, she thought she heard a faint whisper, not from Malik, nor from Nyasha. A voice, soft as flowing water but heavy with immeasurable weight, murmured, "Do not touch. The ocean never forgets." Malik paid no heed to the hesitation. He stood at the end of the table, his eyes cold as the winter sea, waiting. Nyasha was the first to lean forward, taking a knife to cut a piece of the golden flesh and bringing it to her lips without so much as a blink. The sound of her bite echoed softly in the air, but it was like a drum signaling the start of something momentous. Abeni trembled. She felt caught between two forces, Nyasha's burning ambition on one side and the invisible warning on the other. The chill from the cave walls crept down her spine. She looked at Malik, meeting his gaze, and understood that to retreat now uphill would cost her everything. Her hand reached out, touching the warm flesh. The scent enveloped her, clouding her mind. Finally, she placed it on her lips, and the sweet, briny taste flooded her senses, bringing with it a strange sensation, as if she were swallowing a part of the ocean itself. At that moment, the torch flames flickered wildly, though no breeze stirred. The air in the cave grew thick, as if every molecule were contracting. Shadows in the crevices of the rocks shifted, slithering like living creatures. From the far corner, Mommy Zaya stirred slightly. Her smile unfurled slowly, not the smile of the defeated, but of one who had just completed an ancient ritual. A sound rang out, not through the air, but reverberating directly in their minds. "Now you are mine." Abeni froze. Nyasha frowned slightly. Malik, though standing at a distance, felt a chill rise from the soles of his feet. In that moment, Mommy Zaya's silver eyes flashed, reflecting every bead of sweat on their brows. Then everything fell silent again. Only the drip of water from the cave's ceiling and heavy breathing remained. But this silence was not peaceful. It was the pause before a true storm's arrival. Malik looked at Abeni and Nyasha, both avoiding his gaze. He told himself he had won, but somewhere deeper, a vague sensation, like the cold hand of the sea brushing the back of his neck, lingered, impossible to shake off. The morning after, Port Royal seemed to don a different cloak. The sky was blue, but the sunlight carried a pale hue, as if filtered through deep ocean water. The sea breeze blowing into the city was no longer crisp as usual, but damp and heavy, carrying a faint whiff of rotting seaweed. The people were unaware that, in the darkness of the previous night, a curse had begun to take root. Nyasha was the first to change. Within just a few days, her body seemed brimming with vitality. Her steps grew stronger, her breaths long and deep, as if she were drawing the entire ocean into her lungs. Her eyes, already sharp, now gleamed with a strange cold light, radiant like moonlight on water. When she spoke, her voice resounded with a low timbre that made even the oldest guards instinctively bow their heads. But this newfound strength came with a silent price. At night, standing before a mirror, Nyasha noticed her reflection no longer matched her movements perfectly. In the mirror, her reflection's lips pressed together while she still breathed evenly. The hand in the mirror rose slowly, while her own remained limp by her side. It felt as though someone else was borrowing her body from the other side of the glass. Abeni, in contrast, found no trace of strength. Every night, she sank into fitful sleep, only to be pulled into a wet, icy dream. In those dreams, she fell into the depths of the sea, darkness wrapping around her like invisible silk. Hundreds, thousands of round, glowing eyes like small moons silently watched her. They did not approach, only stared, but their gaze made her heart pound, as if it sought to escape her chest. Each time she awoke, her nightgown was soaked, and the taste of salt lingered on her lips. Malik, too, did not escape the transformation. One morning, as King Kwame passed through the training courtyard, he caught sight of his son standing motionless under the sun, eyes wide open, pupils spreading into a deep blue like the ocean's depths. Malik's skin had dried, no longer bearing the glow of health, but cracking faintly at the knuckles, like a riverbed in drought. When called by name, Malik turned, his smile the same as before, but with a slight delay, as if the one responding was not entirely his son. These signs did not escape the elder's notice. On a gloomy afternoon, as clouds hung low over the palace roof, they gathered in a sealed meeting room. The scent of ebony and sweetgrass could not dispel the smell of anxiety permeating the air. They spoke not of state affairs or harvests, but whispered of the sin of eating the daughter of the sea. The oldest elder recounted a tale from ancient times. A young leader had once dared to anger the mother of the sea, and within a single moon cycle, his entire tribe vanished, leaving only waterlogged footprints leading to the ocean. Rumors began to trickle from the palace attendants. The guards at the gates swore that at night they heard water lapping against the city walls, though the tide had not risen. Gardeners vowed they had seen drenched figures passing through the palm rows, vanishing the moment they stepped into moonlight. These stories quickly found their way to the market, then to the harbor. Meanwhile, Mami Zaya remained imprisoned in the cave. No one dared enter except Malik and Jahlani, but each time they returned, their gazes grew a little more distant. On some evenings when Malik stepped inside, she merely looked at him, unmoving, but in her eyes waves were churning, and those waves carried the shadows of those he held dear. The entire kingdom stood on the fragile boundary between peace and chaos, though no one yet realized it. The curse was no longer confined to the 3 individuals in the cave. It was seeping into every cobblestone, every wave crashing on the shore, every salty breath of Port Royal. And if the sea had chosen to begin collecting its debt, who would be taken next? That night, Port Royal was steeped in an unusual stillness. The sea breeze seemed to be held back somewhere offshore, leaving the air thick and heavy, like the humidity before a storm. The moon hung low, its light casting a cold silver sheen over the red-tiled roofs and coral stone corridors. A scream pierced the night, tearing through the darkness. It wasn't the cry of someone afraid, but the gut-wrenching wail of someone severed from this world. From every corner of the palace, guards and maids rushed toward the harem, where the scream had originated. When Nyasha's chamber door was flung open, the room was bathed in an eerie green light, not from torches or moonlight, but from a deeper, more otherworldly source. She lay motionless on the bed, her body slightly arched as if floating in water, though the mattress beneath remained dry. Her skin was cold and slick, reflecting light like the surface of a fish just pulled from the sea. Her soaked hair clung to the pillow, droplets of salt water trailing down in streaks. Beside the bed, the large mirror against the wall was no longer clear. Its surface rippled faintly, forming circles that spread and contracted, like a pebble dropped into a still lake. Everyone in the room stepped back, no one daring to approach. Then, abruptly, the ripples vanished, leaving the mirror smooth, reflecting the room itself but empty, without Nyasha. No one understood what had just happened. No one heard a door open, footsteps, or any sound of impact. Only the initial scream and the chilling silence that followed remained. Malik arrived last. He stood at the threshold, staring at Nyasha's body. A familiar sensation ran down his spine, the same feeling he had known when standing before Mami Zaya. He realized something had slipped beyond his control, if it had ever been in his grasp at all. Abeni stood huddled in a corner of the room. When her eyes met the mirror, a chill coursed through her body. She no longer saw Nyasha, but from the depths of the mirror's reflection, something glimmered, like the moon-like eyes she encountered in her dreams. She understood, without anyone saying it, the ocean had chosen its first victim, and it was not finished. The news spread through the palace before dawn. People whispered that Nyasha had been taken by a sea spirit, or that her soul had drifted to the mother of the sea to pay the debt for the golden-scaled flesh. The elders remained silent, but their eyes betrayed fear. The next day, Nyasha's chamber was sealed. The guards who had been stationed in the nearby corridor were reassigned elsewhere, but everyone knew they had heard and seen more than they dared recount. In the darkness of the hallways, they whispered of dripping water, of drenched figures passing by, and of silver eyes appearing in the void before vanishing. Malik avoided speaking of it, but deep down, He knew Nyasha's death was not caused by anything humans could comprehend. The memory of Mami Zaya's gaze in the cave during the feast flashed in his mind, her smile as if waiting for this to happen. Abeni lived in constant fear. Every night, she dreamed of being pulled to the ocean's depths. But now, her dreams held a new detail. Among the circle of hundreds of glowing, moon-like eyes, she recognized a familiar gaze. Nyasha, standing there, but not in human form. Her hair floated like seaweed, her skin shimmered silver, her eyes blazed in the darkness. And Nyasha smiled, slowly reaching out toward her. When Abeni awoke, the smell of salt clung to the air in her room, and the wooden floor beneath her feet was cold and wet, as if a wave had just swept through. The entire kingdom sensed something rising, like an unstoppable tide. But no one knew or dared to say that Port Royal had crossed an invisible boundary, a boundary that once crossed, only the sea could decide who would return. Do you have a guess about what will happen next? Take a moment to relax, comment the number 1, or I'm still here to keep listening. My dear audience, stay tuned for the next part that will leave you in awe. Take a second to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always exciting to see someone join us from all corners of the world. That morning, Port Royal was not awakened by the beat of market drums or the sound of waves crashing on the shore, but by an eerie silence, an unnatural stillness, as if the entire space was holding its breath. When the maids reached Abeni's chamber, the door was still closed, but the cold stone floor was streaked with wet marks, trails of water stretching from the bed to the threshold. Inside, the room was empty. No call, no stir. Only the steady drip of water from somewhere in the darkness, like the sound of droplets falling into a bottomless abyss. On the dressing table, the white seashell comb remained, but the mirror before it was clouded, covered with a thin layer of mist, and within that mist, something like a faint ripple seemed to have just faded away. The news of Abeni's disappearance spread like wildfire in the wind. The fear that had been smoldering since Nyasha's death now erupted into panic. In the dim corridors, people whispered of the hand of the sea reaching out to pull one person after another into the depths. Many dared not approach windows facing the ocean, as if merely looking out would allow Mami Zaya's gaze to pierce through and drag them away. The Council of Elders was urgently summoned. In the sealed meeting room, the scent of incense mingled with the pungent smell of salt, and each elder bowed their head in silence. There was no longer any doubt the curse had taken root in the very flesh and blood of the kingdom. Abeni's disappearance was a clear sign that the sea would not stop. Amid the howling wind offshore, a cold decision was made. Malik must be offered to the sea. Only when the one who had touched the sin was sacrificed could this deadly cycle end. The decision spread quickly, but not everyone accepted it. Queen Amali, the mother who had once cradled Malik in her arms under the Coral Palace's eaves, could not let her son be taken without a word. She sought out the elders, kneeling before them, her eyes blazing not with the authority of a queen, but with the desperation of a mother clinging to her last shred of hope. She begged for one chance, just one, to see her son before the ritual took place. The elders remained silent for a long time before nodding, not because they were persuaded, but because they knew no one could stop a mother so determined. Meanwhile, Malik was confined in a chamber deep beneath the palace, where light struggled to reach. He sat with his back against the wall, eyes half closed, but each breath sounded like waves crashing against rocky cliffs. Every time he opened his eyes, his pupils glowed with an ocean blue hue that did not belong to the land, and the scent of salt clung to him like a second skin. He did not ask why he was imprisoned, for deep within, he had sensed this judgment long ago. Amahle entered the chamber with heavy steps. In the dimness, she saw the boy who once ran carefree on the sandy shores, now sitting silent like a stone worn smooth by waves. When their eyes met, Malik tilted his head slightly, and for a moment, Amahle wasn't sure if she was looking at her son or some other being borrowing his face. But she stepped forward, sitting before him, her trembling hand resting on his cheek. His skin was cold and slightly damp, but beneath those layers of change, Amahle could still feel the familiar pulse faint, but there. She said little, letting her eyes speak instead. The pain, the longing, and the unconditional love. Malik looked at his mother, and a strange glint passed through his eyes, like the sea parting to reveal a small island. He did not beg for forgiveness or make promises, only held her gaze, as if to etch her image into his memory before everything sank to the depths. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a heavier scent of salt, signaling the rising tide. In the darkness of the cell, the sound of dripping water from a corner of the wall grew louder, steady like the heartbeat of the ocean itself. Amahle knew their time was slipping away faster than ever. That night, the sea was no longer a silent mirror reflecting the moonlight, but a colossal beast lying in ambush, quietly observing everything on shore. The air was thick, the sea breeze carrying a heavy scent of salt and rotting algae seeping through every corner of Port Royal. Every door was shut tight, yet the curtains still swayed faintly, as if an invisible hand brushed past. Everyone felt something approaching, but no one dared step outside. Amahle walked alone, leaving behind the brightly lit palace where the elders were preparing for the sacrificial ritual demanded by the sea. She chose the stone-paved path leading to the old harbor, where she used to take Malik to play as a child. Today, that path felt longer than ever. Each step weighed on her shoulders like 100 pounds, but she did not slow down. The cold moonlight shone on her back, casting a long shadow across the stones, blending with the silhouettes of the masts standing solitary offshore. Malik stood at the end of the pier. His figure merged with the dark water, his shoulders rigid, his eyes fixed on the vast black ocean. The light reflecting off the water made him appear as if he stood on the boundary between two worlds, half belonging to the land, half already claimed by the sea. As Amahle drew near, she noticed her son's breath carried a heavy, deep saltiness, a scent foreign to those who lived their lives on shore. The water before them trembled slightly. From the depths, Mummy Zaya emerged without a single ripple to herald her arrival. Her hair flowed long, coiling in the dark current, her golden scales catching the moonlight, radiating an enchanting glow so beautiful it made one forget the danger. Her silver eyes settled on Amahle, piercing through every heartbeat, every vein in the mother's body. Her voice rang out, not through lips, but as if woven into the strands of the breeze. "You may keep your son if you trade your life for his." The words were not an offer, but a sentence, delivered with the calm certainty of one who knew the prey would not refuse. Amahle heard her own heartbeat, each pulse like a knife cutting deep. She did not ask why or try to bargain, for from the moment she saw Malik being drawn into the sea's embrace, she knew some battles could only be won with her own life. Since the day she gave birth to him, she had been ready for this moment. She stepped into the water. Her knees sank into the icy waves, the sea wrapping around her like wet arms, but her eyes remained fixed on her son. Malik turned. In his ocean blue eyes, there was still a spark of warm brown, the human part not yet fully consumed. That was the part she would save, no matter the cost. The waves surged, forming a massive whirlpool around the two women, one of the land, one of the sea. The gold of Mami Zaya's scales blended with the silver of the moonlight, twisting into a strange ring of light, like a fateful noose tightening. Malik tried to rush forward, but an invisible force held him in place, as if hands made of water were pulling him back. Amahle reached out toward her son. The distance was too great to touch, but their eyes connected them. No words were spoken, but every line on her face whispered, "Live for me." Malik clenched his teeth, his eyes blurring, but he could not break through the invisible barrier between them. The whirlpool began to tighten. In an instant, Amahle's form blazed like a golden torch in the night sea, then was swallowed whole. A column of water rose, then collapsed, leaving the sea's surface eerily calm. Only the soft lapping of waves against the wooden posts remained, like the ocean's sigh. Malik fell to his knees on the pier. His breathing quickened, warm again, no longer laced with the sharp saltiness of before. The deep blue in his eyes faded, returning to the familiar brown of his childhood. But when he reached out, his hand met only cold emptiness where his mother had stood. From far offshore, a song rose. It was soft as a lullaby, but heavy with the sorrow of the abyss. It was Amahle's farewell, and a reminder that the debt to the sea was never truly settled. And what will Malik do now that his life has been bought with his mother's soul? The dawn that followed bathed Port Royal in a strange light, both gentle and pale, as if the sun itself knew that the night before had taken something too great. The waves no longer crashed fiercely, only kissing the shore softly, as if soothing it, but in the hearts of the people, a vast emptiness remained. Malik awoke on the sandy beach, his clothes soaked, sand clinging to his hair, and his breath cold as if he had just stepped out of a dream. He sat up, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the morning light painted the sea pink. But in that scene, Amahle's figure was no longer there. The floodwaters had receded, the boats were safely anchored, the fish market by the shore began to light its fires, and children ran playfully on the beach, as if no curse had ever existed. But Malik did not hear their laughter. To him, the only sound left was the lapping of waves against the shore and a whisper woven within it. "Live well, my son." The voice was so soft, the wind could carry it away, yet heavy enough to press on his heart with all the weight of longing and guilt. In the days that followed, Malik returned to the palace. The kingdom was saved, the curse lifted, but the air still carried the scent of salt whenever the sea breeze blew in. Each time he stood on the balcony, he felt as if he could see his mother's dress flickering among the waves, just a heartbeat away from touch, yet infinitely distant. In the depths of the ocean, where light could not reach, Amahle drifted among ancient stone columns encrusted with barnacles. Around her were the ruins of a lost city, crumbling domes, fallen statues, all submerged in an endless deep blue. She wore no chains, yet she could not leave this place. Her eyes still held the light that had once gazed upon her son at the harbor, a love that never waned and a sorrow without end. Mami Zaya appeared silently beside her, her long hair flowing with the current, her silver eyes observing the woman who had become part of the sea. She showed neither triumph nor pity. Her smile was as still as the surface of a deep pool, beautiful, but impossible to guess what lay beneath. She knew that in this bargain, there was no winner or loser, only the sea keeping its custom, taking and never forgetting. In Port Royal, Malik began to change. He spent more time with the fishermen, listening to their stories, learning to understand the sea with respect rather than defiance. He walked the shores, erecting wooden markers inscribed with the names of those lost to the waves, and with each one completed, he whispered a promise to the wind, "I will live well." The elders saw this, and they knew the kingdom was being entrusted to a king who understood that all power on land was small before the breath of the sea. But sometimes, when night fell and the palace grew quiet, Malik heard the sound of dripping water somewhere in the corridors. He followed it, always arriving at a window facing the sea. In the darkness, a pair of silver eyes seemed to flash before vanishing. And he understood that Mami Zaya was still watching, as if reminding him that the debt, though paid with Amahle's life, remained part of his bloodline. When the storm season came, the sea of Port Royal grew restless again. This time, Malik did not set out to hunt fish as before, but joined the fishermen in reinforcing the breakwaters, checking every boat, preparing for the worst. He knew the sea could give, but it could also take at any moment. And if that day came, he wanted to ensure no one would pay the price alone, as his mother had. Far offshore in the vast darkness, Amahle stood on a submerged sandbar in the sunken city. She looked toward the mainland, her eyes piercing the infinite distance, seeking her son's silhouette. Beside her, Mami Zaya still smiled, but this time, her smile held something akin to acknowledgement that some souls, though claimed by the sea, still held a heart tied to the land. The question now was no longer what the sea would take next, but when Malik's time came, how would he choose to settle that debt? The sky over Port Royal turned amber as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the waves. Malik stood at the bow of the ship, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the sky met the sea. The sea breeze caressed his hair, but within that breeze he still heard the familiar echo. "Live well, my son." Each time those words returned, his heart ached yet drew strength from them. The story of Amahle and Malik is not just a warning about the power of the sea, but also a lesson about unconditional love, a love strong enough to defy even fate. In life, we all encounter our own oceans, challenges that seem insurmountable. And sometimes, to survive, we must learn to let go, to accept loss, to protect what we cherish most. But the question remains, what does Mami Zaya truly want? And has the debt between the sea and the kingdom truly been settled, or is it merely waiting for another day to rise again? Will Malik's path lead him to peace or to a new confrontation? If you want to know what happens next, leave a comment below. How do you think Malik will choose? Don't forget to share this story so others can feel the power of love and sacrifice. And if you're ready to join us for part 2, hit follow because sometimes the sea doesn't just hold secrets, it's waiting to tell the rest of the tale.